Welcome to the International Society for Performance Improvement. Up next, Gary Kokens, internationally recognized expert, speaker, and author in advanced cost management and performance improvement systems.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Valerie Bernard, and I'm coming to you live from Dallas, Texas today, and I am a volunteer member for the International Society for Performance Improvement, and with me today is Gary Kokens, owner of Analytics-Based Performance Management, and he is internationally recognized as an expert in advanced cost management and performance improvement, and I am so delighted to have the opportunity to speak with you today, Gary. How are things going for you?
It's great. Thanks for inviting me to present.
Oh, yes, it's just an honor. And you're coming live from where today?
Raleigh, North Carolina, although I'm a Chicago native, but been here for 10 years.
I see. So you're over on the East Coast then. Well, it looks like the sun must be shining through your window today, so that's good news. Well, we're just going to jump right in today, and I mentioned that you've been doing work in performance management and analytics, and what a great topic now to have a conversation about. And I'd just like to start first by asking you, how did you get started in this area?
Well, my career has basically been in what I would call 3/3. This is a 40-year career. I'm 67. My first decade was in the industry, including being a controller at a division of a large conglomerate. My undergraduate education at Cornell is industrial engineering and operations research, but most of my life has been in the CFO space. I always like to say I'm an engineer masquerading as an accountant. My middle 15 years was in large consulting firms, Deloitte, KPMG, and then Electronic Data Systems, which is now part of HP. And then for 16 years, up till 3 years ago when I retired, I was with SAS, which is a very large privately owned software vendor in the analytics space.
That sounds exciting. And you mentioned some of the consulting work that you did at Deloitte as an example, and it was all focused on analytics-based performance management as well.
Well, the analytics actually kind of came later. You know, analytics has only become hot the last 4 or 5 years. The majority of my consulting in those years was with enterprise performance management and corporate performance management methods. And we need to distinguish between those and just performance management. There's a lot of ambiguity. Performance management is typically perceived as a human resources, personnel, employee appraisals, where in contrast, enterprise performance management or corporate is really the enterprise as a whole, and it's the methods that are used, such as, and I'll just rattle through a few of them, strategy map and balance scorecard with KPIs, moving to product, channel, and customer profitability, reporting and analysis using activity-based costing principles, the move from the annual budget to what I call capacity-sensitive, driver-based rolling financial forecasts. I know that was a mouthful, but increasingly the budget's kind of being dismissed as obsolete after a couple of months. Of what people are really looking for is really financial projections, enterprise risk management, lean. All of these moving parts are like gears in a machine, and that's what I was involved with. 4 or 5 years ago, then big data scientists, all that sort of take off. I'm like, say, wow, my operations research degree finally is going to come in handy, and that's when I started to get involved with analytics.
I see. And so you just did it. Thank you for clarifying the difference, and especially because we do get confused about the definition of performance management. But in the line of work that you're doing, what do you think the single most important principle is then?
Well, and first of all, regarding this distinguishing between personnel performance management, they're important because employees are basically part of the enterprise, so it's not like they're disconnected. In terms of principles, I could be tactical and talk about, well, how do you build a strategy map and define key performance indicators? How do you construct a management accounting system and so forth? But I tell you, the biggest principle really has more to do with change management. The software technology has really been proven. It's no longer the obstacle, but the adoption rate of many of these methods is really regretfully slow. I'm really shocked how lack of progressive many companies are. And so the principle really is to pay much more attention to over overcoming resistance to change. Some employees don't want to be held accountable or measured. Some don't want other departments to know the truth. I mean, these are all behavioral issues, so we have to basically get better skills at change management.
What percentage of the business issues that we see do you think that we can attribute to this change management challenge?
I'm sorry, what is your first question?
I'm just wondering what percentage, what percent of the business issues organizations face do you think apply to understanding the change management?
Wow, you're being quantitative, asking what is the percentage?
It's all about analytics these days.
Yeah, basically, there's really a couple of components. I mean, let's just talk about why the adoption rate of these methods is taking so long. Okay. One of them is IT related. There's dirty data, low quality input data, disparate data sources. People have, computer databases from HP, IBM, Dell, and so forth. But, that's resolved. The IT people are basically addressing that. There's another obstacle, which is this perception that, oh, these methods are so complicated, so big, and it'd be so difficult to put in, and is it worth it, and all of that stuff. And, that's really unfortunate because there are techniques to implement these. I'm a big advocate of what's called rapid prototyping with iterative remodeling. And so, if you start with just a small pilot with 4 or 5 employees in a conference room for a couple of days, you can build the first model. It's not really intended for use. Bring in the executives and peer groups to see what was done, and all the light bulbs go out like, wow, oh, so that's how it's done. Oh, we don't need timesheets. Oh, we can use estimates and so forth. And then a couple iterations, within a few weeks, you've got a permanent, repeatable production system. So that's an obstacle. This perception is just way too complicated. But the big hitter is the one I just mentioned. It's really human nature. I mean, people just don't like change, and they don't want to be measured. They don't want to be held accountable. So that's the thing we've got to kind of figure out. How do you get by-in? How do you overcome that resistance?
And then with all these discussions and the research and literature about agile work teams, this seems like this would be something else to consider as we're looking at how these teams do work then. So if somebody wanted to get more support with this process that you're talking about,
the process. Let me just say,
we're having a little technical difficulty, it looks like.
Well,
there we go, you're back.
I'm not a change management scientist. I mean, are in either science or management, but no one's got degrees in sociology or psychology, or very few do. But in the lesson I've learned is you really need 3, if you will, characteristics in abundance, and they must all be combined. You need basically dissatisfaction with the current state. If people are not unhappy, they're not going to change. Secondly, you really need a vision of what better looks like. So you just need to see a method or a system or a technique. And then fourth, it's what I call first practical steps. You basically got to do something like rapid prototyping to demonstrate and prove to people that the theory or the method is not that expensive, not that complicated. So when you combine all 3 of those together in abundance, I think then you can overcome the resistance.
I see. Is there some articles that you've published on this topic that maybe our viewers could read a little bit more about what you're sharing with us today, or some places that you can point us to get more educated if we're wanting to learn more about this?
Yeah, well, I've been writing blogs and articles for many years, but one of them that I did write is in a website of a professional institute called Informs. INFORMS.org. Informs is the Institute of Management Science and Operations Research. I think if you just do a search on my name there, the title of the article is, "What is the obstacle course for analytics?" And it actually goes through that equation that I just sort of talked about, which is, dissatisfaction, vision of what little better looks like, first practical steps.
Yes, okay, well, we'll definitely make sure that we check this out too. And we're so excited because you are going to be our keynote speaker this year at the 2017 ISPI conference in Montreal, Canada. And so we'll be seeing you on Monday, May the 1st in the morning. I believe that you're on deck at 9:30 a.m. and you'll have an hour. And so what can we expect to learn from your keynote? I don't want you to give it all away today, but share with our viewers a little bit about what they might get to learn at the conference.
Well, first I want to mention, since you mentioned about what are places for research, there is a second one. It's the Institute of Management Accountants. I've been sort of privileged. When I did retire, the CEO there called me and said, "You're not going to sit on a rocking chair." And so I've written 2 articles a year for a role they put me in called Executive in Residence. That's www.imanet.org. The IMA has 80,000 members in 140 countries. Regarding my keynote speech, I'm going to talk a little. It is starting to get scary. Robotics. Now we're not talking about just the cognitive software, machine learning, even in white-collar jobs. And so, and the key there is to not be fearful of it, but to figure out, well, how do you basically augment what the computer can do? Because the computer is going to automate a lot of transactional work that's done by humans, but it actually creates an opportunity to basically not have to slog through collecting data and all of that stuff, and move your career to a higher level, really more value added to your organization.
Yes, we're talking about that change again, aren't we?
Yeah.
And I think it seems like it's coming faster than maybe what we might think too. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah. Actually, if the audience wants to observe a very scary YouTube video, the title of it is "Humans Need Not Apply." Just go to YouTube, but "Humans Need Not Apply." It's about 15 minutes. I mean, just one example of when the driverless cars and driverless trucks eventually come about, and that could be in 5 to 10 years. We're talking about a substantial workforce that are truck drivers out of a job.
Yes, and you shared that YouTube video with me earlier on this year, and I did watch it, and it is scary, and we've got to be ready and positioned. So, well, I found out something interesting about you. I found out that you won an award that your grandsons are very proud of, and I would just love it if you would share with our listeners about this award.
Yeah, my grandsons they're 13 and 17. It's a long story. The short one, but bottom line is I'm in the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown for the oldest computer baseball code. It was my junior year at Cornell. It was a game theory project, and when I was like 10 years old, I played dice baseball, and some of the older people listening may remember playing things like that. And so I took the course. I replaced the dice with a random number generator, and a few years ago at Moneyball, I saw that there was the man said he was in the Baseball Hall of Fame for the oldest computer game. It was a couple of years after mine, so I called the curator and librarian at the Baseball Hall of Fame, James Gates. I said, "Yeah, I've got an older one." And he said, "Well, do you still have it?" I don't have the big deck of IBM cards, but I had the printout, so I sent it in to him. And about a month later, he phoned me. He said, "Gary, I have good news. You win. I'm in the Baseball Hall of Fame for the oldest computer baseball code." It's an honor. It's not quite the Wright brothers, or Charles Lindbergh, but given the size of the computer game industry, pretty interesting honor.
Yes, most definitely it is, and congratulations to you now. And so you have 2 grandsons, is that right?
That's correct.
And how old are they now?
13 and 17. So
we'll do a shout out to your 2 grandsons.
I'm available. I say I'm partly retired. If I piqued the interest of some of the individuals, if they did go to my website at garycokins.com, www.garycokins. I do talk about some freelancing work. Typically, it's just 1 or 2 days. I just want to get people going. Teach you to fish. You can fish on your own.
Well, thank you for this. And so we will look forward to seeing you in Montreal. And I want to circle back to that for a minute. I'm not sure we captured what people can expect from your presentation. So I just want to make sure we get that one more time.
Well, I'm going to touch briefly on the artificial intelligence, but most of it's what I talked about in the first 2-3 minutes of my discussion with you. It's all of these various enterprise performance management or corporate performance, they're synonymous, these methods, strategy maps, scorecards, profitability analysis with customers, driver-based rolling financial forecasts, lean management, Six Sigma, enterprise risk management. How do they all fit together? And because most organizations do them in isolation, and so when you seamlessly integrate them, you get a lot more power. And then when you add analytics into each of them, like clustering, regression, correlation, segmentation, associations, those are the kind of the tools of the trade of statistical people, even more power. So my talk is basically, I call it an MBA curriculum in 1 hour.
Wow, I can't wait. I'm looking forward to that. In my background in my research was quantitative, and I kind of tend toward getting excited about when you talk about regression analysis and things like that. But if someone doesn't have experience in that, will they still be able to participate and have some takeaways?
Well, my message to the older people is, when you hear those terms like correlation, regression, they'll say, oh, I took those courses in college. I just wanted a passing grade and be out of there, and I'm saying, well, sorry, it's here. It doesn't mean that people have to have skills. What it does mean, though, is that you do need some employees in your organization that does have these skills, and that you can rely on them. We refer to them often as data scientists, or even they don't have to necessarily have that much skills, but individuals don't need to know how to do correlation. They need to appreciate what are the insights you would gain if someone does that type of analytical work for you in your organization.
I see. And ISPI is sure keeping you busy this quarter. You're going to be our keynote speaker, and then also it's my understanding that there's a webinar coming up on March the 3rd at 11:30 Central Time. Could you share with our audience a little bit about what this webinar will be about?
Well, it's actually going to be, a lot of overlap with what I'll be speaking in Montreal, so it'll be an opportunity for people who can't basically get up to Canada to basically learn about what I call analytics-based enterprise performance management.
That's great. And then for people like me that might need to hear it twice, then we'll have the webinar, and then we'll have the opportunity to look at some of the articles and the research that you've already mentioned and some of your work. And then we'll get to see you again on May 1st in Montreal. I think that's the plan.
Actually, I like people to hear it a second time, because the first time it's pretty overwhelming. It's like, wow, all of these moving parts, all of these methods, but it sinks in, I think, reinforcement when you hear it a second or third time. The last page, incidentally, of my website, thegarykochens.com, has links to a variety of articles that I have written if people want to kind of do their homework before.
That's great. And I also have up on the screen now some of the books that you've written as well. And out of these 6 books here, Gary, which one is your favorite, or which one? I'm sure they're all your babies, but which one would you think that we
well,
should
first
read
of all,
first?
I'm not promoting the books. Believe me, as an author, you don't make a whole lot of money in royalties. The book publisher, which is John Wiley and Sons. My favorite one, as I'm looking, is the upper right corner. That was my second performance management book, and it's got a lot of, I think, to walk through the components. The one on the upper left is more recent, and here's a hint. If you go to Amazon.com, the very first chapter is a free chapter. It's a download, and I think if you just read that, it's like 15 pages. It'll be enough of an introduction, and you don't have to pay any money for it. It's free.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. So if we're getting started reviewing your work, we can look at the performance management book first, and then maybe jump over to business analytics second and work our way around. So we've got plenty to do to learn and to get prepared for you. And I'm going to jump back up on here one more time. We had a little technical difficulty, so I closed my webcam earlier. I wanted to make sure our audience could hear you. But Gary, thank you again for the gift of your time today. And we're looking forward to seeing you again on March the 3rd on our webinar, and all the information for our viewers can be found at www.ispi.org, and at the once you go to that website, you can actually get registered for your webinar now, and your bio's up there. So for our viewers, that's where you'll need to go. And then we'll see you on the 3rd, and then we'll see you again on May the 1st in Montreal, Gary.
Great. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Also, you know, for ISPI, I did author an article, and I can't remember what issue, but it's in the Performance Institute.
Performance Express, I bet.
So,
Yeah,
you can find it there.
We'll make sure that we put some links to that at the end of this presentation as well. And I really, truly, we appreciate you and all you're doing to support the International Society for Performance Improvement, and to take the knowledge that you have and to share it with us is just truly a blessing. So thank you, Gary.
Great. Well, look forward to seeing you in Canada.
That sounds great.
To learn more about the upcoming conference in Montreal, Canada, visit www.ispi.org.